Okay Reddit, what are your true stories that nobody will ever believe? When I was about 6 I would wake up in the middle of the night and in my doorway there would be a large figure and you could make out a silhouette of fur and red eyes. All I could hear was heavy breathing. I would be too terrified to scream and I was on the top bunk of a bunk bed so I wasn't moving anywhere fast. I would pretend to sleep. Eventually I stopped seeing him. In grade 9 I was at a sleepover with about 5 other girls. I was telling them about my experience when one of them describes him to me. I said, how the heck did you know that? She said, our friend Blake saw him too. So the next school day I approached Blake in the hall and just started describing him. He had tears in his eyes and said, how the heck do you know that? He later told me the big hairy man used to sit on his bed and he talked to him but doesn't remember what was said. About 2 years later I had to go to summer school. I was talking to this chick in my class and found out the big hairy man would visit her too. He too would sit on her bed. After high school I was at a party where I was spending the night. My friend Pete and I were sharing a bed just shooting the crap and I brought up the big hairy man. He said, if you could see my face right now I have tears in my eyes. I used to dream he would come through my window and stand over me. We have no connection with each other before high school. Even after all the other sightings my mother still thinks I am crazy. For the record, I don't believe in ghosts or the paranormal, but this one incident was simultaneously the least explainable and most terrifying occurrence in my entire life. When I was about 10, my best friend and I were playing in my recently remodeled basement. I never had gone down there much if ever, even though I spent my entire childhood in the same house. Mostly because that basement had always given me the jeebies big time. My parents left for about an hour to run some errands, so during we were just playing video games. Almost immediately after my parents left, my pet rabbit, who was also down there with us, started freaking out visibly for no reason. At the same time, it got markedly colder in the basement. Surprisingly, this was before I had seen any ghost movies that made use of that cliche. We started getting really freaked out, and then, like out of a horror movie, there was a soft groan behind one of the walls and the main lamp on that side of the basement flickered and then burned out. All of these events happened within about 5 minutes of my parents leaving in chronological order. I remember it vividly and my friend could recount the exact same sequence of happenings to the T. Needless to say, we both ran upstairs screaming while being freaked out beyond comparison. We left the rabbit down there because we were truly mortified. He was in his cage obviously. A couple days later, my rabbit passed away for no apparent reason. I avoided going down there for the rest of the time we owned the house until I went to college. My parents were furious when I refused to use the game room they set up for me down there, not believing a word of what happened. To this day I do not understand at all what happened or why. My friend who was there with me and I will nervously joke about it if it's brought up, but we both know how terrified we were. TLDR. Playing downstairs in my newly finished basement. Encounter a scene from a horror movie plot in real life. Acquire fresh underwear. Radon and or carbon monoxide explain this fairly well. I used to work in the security field, personal security, not rent-a-cop security. In 1989 a friend hires us to do a minor B&E. Turns out a married couple with 2 kids, one 2-year and one 6-year, noticed their neighbors were following them around and had been caught taking pictures. The guy they hired isn't going to risk getting in the crap. So when his clients and the neighbors were out of town, he hired me and another guy to go into the neighbor's house and find out what was up. We entered the place and it was jammed full of surveillance equipment. Very expensive, top of the line stuff. We found files and logs of everything the 6-year was doing. So we finally lugged a copier into the apartment and copied everything. Took 2 days. We found cancel checks, personal letters, hundreds of video and audio tapes. It turned out the neighbor couple were both employees, didn't find by whom. The guy was ex-Navy, gay, and constantly wrote his lover. The chick was single and obviously had psychology training. They were spending all this time following around a freaking 6-year-old, noting his behavior and habits. We found 2 listening devices in his bedroom. His parents were only observed for some environmental influence notes. The weirdest bit was that many of the notes referred to a potential incident that involved the 6-year but seemed to say the incident hadn't occurred yet. The surveillance team, as we now saw they were, had been doing this for 2 years at a cost of a few $100,000. Why? Beats the frick out of me. Freaky crap. During a weekend my cousin spent the night over my grandma's place. I was living there with my family for a while. It was Saturday morning and the day before was when me and my cousin bought our own GamerCube game at the mess stop. I got Animal Crossing and he bought Mario Tennis. We played Mario Tennis a lot on Friday night, so I woke up early, around 7 AM, to play my Animal Crossing. I was so excited and I was on it for like an hour and a half. I started seeing this black paw-like looking thing at the side of the window come up a few times but go away really fast. I just assumed it was a crow. The room I was playing in was on the second floor. I was enjoying the game so much until there was this huge black figure on the side window just staying there. Peripheral vision. I turned my head and looked to the right to see a huge human figure hanging upside down at the window and I just booked it out of the room. Left the game unpaused and the door open. I ran downstairs to wake my cousin up and I told him to come upstairs to see an alien, but he was too tired from staying up too late the night before. I'm still scared going up to that room alone, but I just think of it as me imagining things. I don't do drugs and didn't drink at the time. No one believes me and I don't tell anyone cause I feel like they'd think I'm weird. TLDR. I saw an alien out my window hanging upside down while I was playing Animal Crossing. I one time picked up a combination padlock at my church when I was like 12 or 13ish. I randomly twisted it to 3 numbers, and it opened. I was so excited and started to show some of my friends. They then showed me where the combination was written down and just assumed that I saw it. I tried to convince them the rest of that day that I didn't see that, but they never believed me. Sigh. When I was 13 I had a white horse, named Lily, who died in a freak accident. About a month later I was out in the yard and saw a white horse in the field. Looked away, looked back and it was gone. We only had 2 black horses at the time. It was a rainy, dark night. I thought that was weird, but I was probably imagining it. Then my little 3-year-old brother came out of the barn and said, "Why is Lily in the barn?" I thought she died. I went into the barn and there she was standing in her old stall. I wasn't creeped out. It was weird. I just knew she was saying goodbye. I left and never saw her again. I had this strange sense of closure after that. I never told anyone. I knew they'd think it was a trick of the light or I was hallucinating. When I was younger I got roped into watching my 3-month-old niece while my sister got her hair done. So when there I am, sitting in the waiting area of a hair salon with my niece, in walks Keanu Reeves. I was nervous as crap and just kept looking at him while he read the magazine and waited, but I was too scared to say anything to him. Pretty soon though my niece started crying, and I'm trying to quiet her down because I didn't want her to bother Keanu, but she wouldn't stop. Pretty soon he gets up and walks over. He started running his hands through her hair and asked what's wrong. I replied that she was probably hungry or something. So Keanu put down his magazine, picked up my niece and lifted his shirt. He breastfed her right there in the middle of the hair salon. Chill guy, really nice about it. No one will believe me about what I just read. My entire family was on vacation, at a hotel on the beach. Me and my cousin are sitting out by the beach around 9 at night, and start seeing this orange orb of light on the horizon. At first we think it's a cruise ship, because the port was not too far from our hotel. We're staring at these lights though for good 5 minutes, and realize it's more than we think. They're not moving at all, so they're not flares or lights from a boat, and they are about 15 degrees above the horizon. We watch them for a few more minutes, and one of them disappears. It doesn't just fade out, kind of phases out like you would see if you turn off a very old black and white TV. That's when my cousin grabbed his camera and started filming the second one. Filmed it for a few minutes, turned off his camera, and then the second one vanished after around 5 more minutes. All my family thought we were crazy for thinking it was a UFO and just thought we saw a boat. I still have the video but haven't done anything with it. I have tattoos that apparently make it seem I am part of the Russian mafia. I've had random restaurant owners flash me their guns because they think I'm dangerous or a big deal or something. It didn't help I was dating a Russian at the time. Pretty scary, actually. You should have said, "I am driver. I go left. I go right. I go straight ahead. That's it." I was walking my dog at 3 in the morning. I am a late shift worker and it was my night off. and out of nowhere I see a triangle-shaped craft or some crap come zooming through the sky, and one of the points turns to face me. A light on said point pulsed 3 times while it just hovered there. Meanwhile I'm standing there mouth agape. My dog is going crazy, and then it turns back the way it was facing and zooms off into the clouds. The size from what I saw, it was like a nickel-sized triangle held out at arm's length. 4 lights on each side. 9 lights total. 1 on each corner, 2 on each edge. I've never told anybody because I knew nobody would believe me. I actually have 2 stories I tell, and I always have to call those who were there so they can corroborate the story. 1. I was standing on a balcony at my friend's party smoking a cigarette, and another one of my friends calls up at me to give him a smoke. Well, it was my last one, so I toss him the lit cigarette I was smoking. He catches it between his pointer and middle finger at just the right place for him to start smoking it without any adjustment. 2. I was at a high school football game and I had just purchased some M&Ms from the snack booth when a friend of mine yells over, "You're not going to share." She is about 20 yards away standing with her friends, so I grab an M&M and throw it. She opens her mouth and the fricking thing goes right down her throat. Hand to God. Everyone starts clapping and I take a bow. Later her and I are talking and we realize she is lucky she didn't choke or breaks a tooth. Both true stories. I was a cross-country runner in high school and was doing a December training run in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. I was running in farmland in the middle of nowhere when I started hearing what sounded like howling. I didn't really think anything of it, and a few minutes later I saw this big dark figure at the end of the road, probably about 600 meters away from me. It was pretty far off, so I kind of ignored it and kept running, and then about 30 seconds later I look up again. When I run I usually focus on the ground 10-15 feet ahead of me, and there's 2 more dark figures sitting there. Couldn't really tell what they were. I don't know why I didn't really take notice, but next time I'll look up I realize that these are wolves and they're running flat out straight towards me. They are probably 100 meters away from me. I immediately turn around, pick up a stick for protection, and start sprinting away from them. About 30 seconds later I look back and they've given up the chase. I later read that wolves only chase for about a minute. I also heard that wolves really don't pursue humans, but were just practicing their hunting techniques. Anyway, had to wash my shorts out after that scare and never ran there again. I was snowed in, staying in a new city, with my manager because she lived a block away. I invited my guy friend over. We all drank a ton that day, then passed out. I was awoken at 10 PM and I heard those gushing sound. He was pee all over me in his sleep in my manager's bed. Me thinking, I am at my boss's house. I have to stop this. I grab a towel from the floor, cover his penis. It soaks in seconds. BTW, he is 6 feet 5 inches and a big guy. Throw the towel on the hardwood floor and just grab his penis to try and pinch it off while I slap him in the face to wake up. It just sprays out faster all over my hair and face. It was like when you pinch off your water hose to make it spray. He had to stay with us the next night. His car was stuck. That night he didn't pee on me. This 6 feet 5 inches monster got up, walked into the kitchen facing the living room, proceeds to fart a lot, and pees on the dishes soaking in the sink. My boss was on the couch awake and watching in terror. I had to drain that sink with my bare arms. I just read about him getting arrested for peeing in public. What a shock. Also, the website didn't specify, it said urinating and or defecating, but I know the rest of the story. 4 years ago I was involved in a road accident. It was an icy day and a car coming toward me on the other side of the road lost control and spun 180 degrees into my path. I braked, but because of the ice I slammed into the rear of the other car. The driver admitted fault and we exchanged insurance details. A few weeks later my insurance company informs me that since I hit the rear of the other car I was at fault, because the other driver had told his insurance company that I was tailgating him and slammed into him. So I lost my car, my no claims bonus, and now have a black mark against my name for the next few years, meaning my insurance is sky high, all because one cunning butthole lied to his insurance company about the events of the accident. Now this is the bit you won't believe. I used his insurance policy number as my lottery ticket number. After 3 draws the numbers came up and I won £4.2 million. So while Mr. Lying Bastard can go frick himself, Had he not screwed me over, I wouldn't have used his policy number for my ticket and wouldn't be nicely loaded. So frick you and thank you. Total bollocks. I lost my virginity on a washing machine in a sorority house while the entire sorority watched, and later had sex with the same girl for 4 hours while on Viagra that she accidentally gave me. That explains your username. Nobody's going to see this, but never mind. We were on a school trip or something like that. I had been up for almost 30 hours and me and a friend were waiting for a ride back home. We were playing backgammon when all of a sudden I see me and my friend from above. Just for a few seconds. But I seriously saw me and my friend sitting there, playing backgammon. Sleep deprivation does crazy crap with the brain. I stayed up all night studying for a final and heard whispering the whole time, and hallucinated people turning around to talk to me. Made it crazy hard to focus. I've actually got quite a few stories that nobody believes. I've just stopped telling most of them in order to avoid being seen as a liar. However, one story comes from when I used to babysit kids in my neighborhood. I used to live in a pretty well-off area, but this one family's house was particularly huge, and their son was particularly spoiled. Seriously, this kid was bad. He was only 14, but he nearly burnt down somebody's house, got caught with C, and brought knives to school several times. But his parents just wrote that stuff off as kids will be kids. They paid pretty freaking well, and I was the only kid left who would babysit their son. So I agreed to babysit for them. I had managed to get the kid to do his homework, and I was getting ready to make dinner. Now his dad thought it would be a great idea to give his son a bow and arrow set for his birthday or whatever. The kid comes in and says he's done with his homework and asks if he can go play with his bow. I checked that he had actually done his homework, and it was done. So I said okay, but stay where I can see you. They had a huge backyard and big windows that looked out back from the kitchen. He said okay and ran out back. I had barely had time to even start some water boiling when I look out back and he's gone. I turned off the stove and ran out back. Many of the backyards in the neighborhood weren't completely fenced in. They had side fences, but no back fence. So if you walked along behind them, you could just walk into the backyard. The family I was babysitting did not have a fully fenced in yard, and neither did the house a few doors down. I ran out of the backyard and turned to see him standing a few houses down. When I ran up to him, I noticed that he was just standing there, wide-eyed. I was about to ask him what it was, when I turned and saw it. He had accidentally shot the neighbor's dog with his bow. He looked down at his bow, looked at me, and then tossed me the bow and said tag, you're it, and ran back to his house. My grandfather was one of the engineers that designed the left wing of the hatch door that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima. Blew my mind when I first heard it. No pun intended. I used to grow magic mushrooms on a sizable scale. I had it so that no one knew I was the grower. I made some good change. Hell, I also had a lot of good times. I doubt anyone would believe me now with what I do for a living. Quack. Some random guy I didn't know put all that crack C in my car just before the police pulled me over. Honest, officer. It's Sunday, 6:30 AM. We're going to go snowmobiling before a hockey game. I'm about 13-14, and I'm staying at a buddy's place. It's gotta be -35 because the snowmobile was having problems getting started, and this thing was old. Its throttle and clutch were crap, so we knew it was going to be frustrating. Thankfully a third guy came over with some starter fluid. I don't even know what this stuff does, but I know now he shouldn't have dumped half the can in while we weren't looking. I guess it only needed a drop or two. The next attempt at starting the sled resulted in a huge bang and it took off. He was barely hanging on and crossed the road in front of his place, into a park. But there was a small snow hill there and the sled went right over it, leaving him on his butt. The sled kept going across the park, accelerating, and cleared the next snow hill on the far side. At this point I realized the third guy was running home, and I look back to see and hear the sled crash into the front skirting of this guy's trailer. There are parts all over the lawn now and my buddy is running up. Now he wasn't the sharpest tool, half a can lol. And the owner of the house runs out and I heard something like WTF did you do to my house? My buddy replies, look at my ski-doo. I'm now horizontal, in tears, which are freezing on my face. Laughing so hard I started hyperventilating. I thought frick it, I'm not dealing with this and went back inside to sleep until the game. Later that morning when I came back out, the sled chassis is there, and there's a garbage bag full of parts. I start giggling like a little kid and walk over to look. The speedometer is disconnected and is reading way I past the max speed, at which point I fell over in laughter again. My buddy says, with this faraway look in his eyes, I've never seen it go that fast. Hanging out in my friend's basement this one time, and we got onto the topic of 2 girls 1 cup. A couple of my friends said they had never seen it and didn't know what it was, so we took the natural course of action and made them watch it. Here's the part that no one will believe. They watched the entire thing through with straight faces. Afterwards, we were like, well, what did you think? One of them, it seems perfectly natural. Probably happens all the time. The other, yay, I kinda liked it. I crap you not. The only explanation is that they have seen it before and were just fricking with you. One time I was eating McDonald's french fries while walking in NYC and some guy reaches from behind me and grabs one. I turn to see the guy and it's Bill Murray. He looked me straight in the eyes and says no one will ever believe you and just disappears into the crowd. The first girl I ever slept with gave me a blowjob in the backseat of her dad's car while he was driving me back to my house after I had stayed over their house to go see Metallica at Lollapalooza in 1996. She also blew me in their kitchen the night before the show. He knew. A few years back I was driving to a movie with 2 of my friends. We were waiting at a red light when suddenly we hear a loud bang. We look to the middle of the intersection where 2 cars had apparently collided. As we and people in other vehicles were about to get out of our cars to lend a hand, both cars took off in different directions. Left in their wake was a cross-section covered in shiny material, either broken glass or some weird confetti. I'm not sure as we only had the one street light to go off of and 3 cowboy hats. As we drove off I had to ask my 2 friends if they saw that too just in case I was going crazy. They said they saw it too. TLDR. I experienced firsthand why cowboys are bad drivers. When I was in the 5th grade, I went with my French-Canadian friend and his family to some French cultural thing out of town. During the drive back I was suddenly overcome with this sense of loss and I was somehow certain that my grandmother had just died. When they dropped me off at home my entire family was quiet and my dad was staring at old pictures of her. Apparently she had died about an hour earlier, which is about when I had felt her loss. Go figure. When I was in high school I used to take the bus home. I live in a valley. One day I was riding home and looking out the window with my iPod in. I see a really strange metal disc in the sky. It was moving kind of erratically, hovering in the same spot but sort of shifting back and forth. I stare at it for a while and then turn around to grab someone so they could look too. No one paid attention so I looked back and watched the metal disc disappear behind the ridge of the valley. It sure as crap wasn't a plane or weather balloon. Still have no idea what I saw. TLDR. Saw a UFO. Don't believe in UFOs. I was playing with my lighter around the house, shits and giggles ink, and I see a fly buzzing around me, so I swing my hand at it in a go away motion. Turns out I hit it directly into my lighter because I saw a tiny orange glow for a couple seconds and then a dead fly on the ground. Summer of 2006. I'm living in St. Thomas, SV for work. It's about 11 PM. I'm sitting out on the balcony of my condo having a drink when I notice lights in the sky to the sea over the Caribbean. I see what looks like possibly 3 helicopters hovering, perhaps with some sort of flashing lights on them. I think nothing of it, probably law enforcement or the Coast Guard or something. The thing is, neither the local police nor the Coast Guard even have anything like I saw in the area, but they stay there, stationary in the sky, for several minutes. After about 5 minutes there's a flash in the sky in the center of where the other lights were. I guess the flash could have been heat lightning, but the frick if I know what the other 3 sets of lights were. I was at a Seattle Sonics game. Remember them in 2005? For a school trip thing. I folded my program into a paper airplane and thought, what would happen if I just tossed this? I wonder how far it would go. We were way up in the nosebleeds, so I decided frick it and discreetly threw up. It floated slowly and perfectly across the arena, hit Danny Fortson in the head, or hair, went between the referee's legs and landed at the foot of an Indianapolis coach. He picked it up and showed it to some of the guys on the bench. Goddamn, I was proud of that. My friends who were right next to me saw it, but of course the chaperone immediately demanded to know who threw it. They all covered for me and said it came from way behind us. This was back in 1979. I was doing a spot of fishing out in Georgia, and I was pretty stressed out from my job at the time. All of a sudden this goddamn rabbit swims towards me and jumps in the fricking boat, starting to attack me. No one believes me to this day. In my early 20s during the late 80s, my family had relocated to a rural area where we lived about 2 miles off the highway back in the woods. I was coming home from work after the evening shift, so it was about 11:30 p.m. The road from the highway to our home is just wide enough for 2 cars and not much more, with a drainage ditch on either side, and the trees woods forest grow right to the edge. I make the last turn and began the last straightaway and see a single light coming down the middle of the road. I'm thinking, heck, someone's got a headlight out, so they have their brights on, which are gonna blind me in just a minute. As the light got closer, I started decreasing my speed in case I need to try take evasive action, because he is still coming right down the middle of the road. I had slowed to 10-15 miles per hour and I totally sucked wind as a bowling ball sized light cruised right over the hood and windshield of my car. I looked over my shoulder and watched it go over the back hatch. I was driving an RX-7. Scared shitless, I floored it home and told my family about it the next day. I got the typical accusations. You were tired, drunk, or high. I assure you I was none of the thosy. This happened 2 more times to me in the following months and everyone laughed about my UFO story. Time passes, I get married, and eventually move my family back in the woods near my parents. Every once in a while something causes that story to come up and they all have a great time teasing me about it. My wife was having a conversation with Sue, a friend of ours who has lived back here longer than we have. To this point the two of them have never discussed my story. Sue says something, can't remember exactly what, and my wife, so next you're going to tell me you've seen Butthead's UFO. LOL. Sue, oh, you mean Butthead has seen our guardian? Wife, what? Sue, yeah, the ball of light that meets you on the road and follows you home safely. Wife, you mean he wasn't making that up? You've seen it too? Sue, yeah, I've seen it, my brother's seen it, and my dad's seen it, but he won't admit it. It scares him when he sees it or if we talk about it. Even when I tell this story now people think I'm still full of crap, but it was nice at least knowing I wasn't crazy. And yeah, since those 3 incidents over a couple of months, I've never seen the Guardian since. When I was in gym class in high school, I threw a football from one side of the gym to the other and it landed in the basketball net. Swoosh. No one saw it. I remained a virgin. My brother was kicked out of those house and I hadn't heard from him in 2 years. Out of the blue, a co-worker asked me if I had an older brother who lived downtown. I said I did have an older brother, but was unsure of his whereabouts. She asked for his name, and when I told her she got this huge smile across her face. It turns out her boyfriend, who was working as a roofer, had been training a guy to help out the team. While my co-worker was showing him pictures of our Christmas party, he had asked her to pause at a picture of me and said she looked exactly like the kid I'm training. Exactly like him. Me and my brother are now in regular contact thanks to his help. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.